Welcome to Pathways to Aviation. It's day 2 of our Aviation Career Week. It's our 4th annual Aviation Career Week, our 2nd in a virtual format. And if yesterday's any indication, we will just make this a virtual format forever because we had such a great audience. We had amazing panelists. And this Zoom format allows us the opportunity to bring industry experts into a room with students and active job seekers so that they can make the next connection in their pursuit towards aviation and aerospace careers. We're Pathways to Aviation. It's a 501c3 nonprofit organization which informs, inspires, and engages aviation and aerospace's next generation. And we provide career readiness tips for anybody looking to get into the aviation industry in any role. Whether it's piloting, it's mechanics, it's food service, it's legal, whatever your specialty is, so long as you want to pursue a career in the aviation or aerospace industry, we will help you make that happen. We do a lot of career coaching. We help you work on your resumes, help you articulate your skills, experiences, and interests in a verbal format. So networking and interviewing and all that. We do it on a regular basis. We do it online. We have a certification program that helps you guide yourself towards that greatness. This week, we're celebrating a week of aviation careers. Today's topic is just for pilots. Right now, we're meeting with 4 amazing leaders, and in 2 hours, we'll meet with AOPA. But right now, I'm going to turn the show over to Joe Rajasic, he's a board member for Pathways to Aviation. He's an incredible mentor, and he has many years of experience as a commercial pilot. So Joe, the show is yours.
Thank you, Pete. Welcome, everybody, and thanks for taking an hour out of your day to spend with us to help your own careers. We're here to help you, like Pete said. I'm the moderator today. I have a short aviation background, only about 49 years, 37 with the airlines. I've flown test piloting for NASA. I've done design engineering for new airplanes. I'm a CFI, I'm an A&P, and I've had some experience in the airline industry, 37 years with United. But we'll discount all that because the 3 people we have are a lot better at telling you how to get the jobs today than I am. It's been a long time since I've been in that field. So we'd like to introduce our 3 panelists today. And since I have the Hollywood squares up, I'll go left to right. And Lindsay, I'd like to introduce Lindsay to you, and she's going to tell you a little bit about herself. And then we're going to have some questions and answers for all of them a little later on. Lindsay.
Thanks, Joe. Hey guys, my name's Lindsay. Thanks for joining us today. Especially a big shout out to those who have their screens on. It's always nice to see faces, not names. So thanks for that. I'll be kind of looking at you on my screen. So I have had a 20-year career in aviation. I've done a lot of different things, but mostly I've been in business aviation as a corporate pilot. I've also flown seaplanes in the Caribbean. I've flown the rich and famous. And my big thing is really all about networking. How do you prepare? How do you make those connections? And these days, it's a lot online. It's what we're doing. It's on LinkedIn. It's reaching out on Facebook groups. It's really getting to know people. And I know that sounds weird and kind of like, well, how do I get a job just by someone I met on LinkedIn or on this webinar? But it really happens. I have a lot of stories of people who have just reached out and made those relationships. And you guys are all probably really good at that, better than us older people. So what I currently do now is I do a lot of coaching and consulting. I do consulting for aviation departments. I do group coaching for pilots to get them ready for that dream job. There's a lot of times where you think all you have to do is build hours, but there's a lot more to it. So I help prepare you so that when you get an interview, everything's ready to go. And now all you have to do is really polish up specific interview answers. I also do a lot of work with stim blazers, webinars. I see Aero Guards on. I do a lot of work with Aero Guard. And my big thing is really just helping people stay in aviation, right? Aviation is a really hard career path, and we want you to stay in there. So if it's mentorship, I had a phone call this morning with a pilot, and she says, hey, I have another friend who's interested in becoming a firefighter. Do you know anyone? And I said, I sure do. So I know a lot of different paths in aviation, and I am always a big proponent on go out there, try everything. There's a lot more than just the airlines and corporate and military. There's a lot in the middle, and it's a lot of fun. And you might have a really fun specific niche you find. And so I'm all about making sure you guys know what's out there as well. So at that, I'm going to turn it back to Joe and hopefully spark some questions that we can answer later for you guys. So thank you.
Thanks, Lindsay. Okay, next on Hollywood Squares, we have Rochelle. Tell us about yourself, Rochelle.
Hi, good morning, everybody. This is exciting to see so many people here. And my name's Rochelle. I've got about 10 years of experience in student outreach and professional development. I have my bachelor's in English and then my master's in business administration. And I started working in student outreach when I myself was a college student, and then worked my way up from working one-on-one with students in an academic capacity to then preparing them on the back end for their careers post-graduation. And I'm now the Director of Graduate Services at California Aeronautical University, and I teach a class on professional resource development. The big thing, I love what Lindsay said about networking. I couldn't agree more. In one of my classes, a textbook that we teach, there's a statistic that says that 80% of jobs, up to 80%, aren't even published on anywhere that you can find them. Indeed or LinkedIn. It's called the hidden job network, and it's all about who you know, how many people you know, and I have alumni from CAU who will attest to the fact that they have done a good job of getting into the industry, getting involved and participating. And because of that, they've gotten most of the opportunities that they've gotten in their career were not things that they went out and applied for, but instead things they were headhunted for because their professional brand spoke for itself, even when they were not there in the room. So I love that you said that, Lindsay. A little bit about what I do. I'm here to help students make sure that they can achieve their career goals. So the first step to that is really trying to figure out what it is that they're looking for. And there are a lot of options, and aviation is a multifaceted industry. So I'm here to help with research, and then not only researching the different opportunities, but encouraging students to get involved in on-campus events, alumni events, employer visits, career fairs, join conferences, join organizations, and then also start to self-evaluate and compare what the industry's looking for in a job candidate with, well, what's an inventory of the skills that I have versus the things I still need to develop. Find the place where your skills and your desires in terms of what you define as a quality of life align with the right job fit for you, and then chase that goal. And I'll help with from starting with square one on that to all of the aspects of professional resource development in terms of your resume, LinkedIn, cover letter, etc., job applications, and interview prep. So that's a little bit about me, and back to you, Joe.
Thanks, Rochelle. This is Tim coming up next. He's the only one with an airplane in the background, so we're anxious to hear what you have to say, Tim.
Yes, this is actually my garage. That's a lie. It really isn't. I wish it was. So good morning, everybody, or good afternoon, depending on what part of the country we're speaking to you in, and thank you for spending part of your day here with us. My name is Tim. I work with FAPA. FAPA is Future and Active Pilot Advisors. The future and active is the pilots, not the advisors. So whether you are interested in a career in aviation, whether you've already established a career in aviation, whether you're looking for your 65 and after career in aviation, that's part of what we do. Echoing something of what Rochelle said, I stumbled into FAPA. It was not a listed job. It was a relationship that I'd built during my time recruiting with the airlines that it kind of worked out very well. So Rochelle, I definitely would go ahead and agree with what you said about so many of the jobs are not necessarily listed, because I am in one of them. If they say the shortest distance between 2 points is a straight line, then the way I got into aviation was a bowl of spaghetti. I absolutely did not go ahead and effort to go ahead and become a pilot when I went off to college. It was something I stumbled into. I think like a lot of people out there, I wasn't necessarily sure the direction that I wanted to take. I never grew up. That is not going to change anytime soon. But I stumbled into aviation, and aviation kind of stumbled into me. I often talk to people about career in aviation and say that aviation is vocational. It's a lot like being a firefighter. You cannot explain to somebody why you want to run into a building to save a stranger. And I don't think you could explain to somebody sometimes why you want to get into aviation. Aviation chose me, and that worked out fine for me. My goal was at one point to go and be an airline pilot. Built all my hours and experience as a flight instructor. And when I got to my crossroads, I realized that I actually loved teaching more than I liked flying airplanes. I still like flying airplanes, but teaching was my biggest passion. So I ended up staying in the flight training industry for a number of years. I did eventually get involved in the airlines, running the pilot recruiting department for one of the carriers. And whether we want to call it recruiting or admissions or whatever, to me, it's all instructing. It's all teaching. It's all talking to people about how we can go ahead and assist them and how they can go ahead and assist themselves. So that's a big part of what I do at FAPA right now. So again, my journey was not normal. I don't think anyone's journey in aviation is normal. We were running a career fair event in San Diego at the end of 2019, and we were right across from the San Diego Padres Stadium. And it occurred to me as I was looking at that stadium is exactly like aviation in that there are so many doors to get into it. There is not any one door that's going to be better than the rest. If you are parked on the left side of the stadium, then you probably want to get the door closest to that because that is what's convenient for you. And aviation is exactly the same. So I enjoy the chance to go ahead and talk to people, and a little bit of what Lindsay said as well, do what we can to allow them to put their best foot forward as they're looking for their forever job or their next job. So many people skills that go into that. Technical skills are obviously important for a pilot interview. Last time I checked, every single one of us started in aviation not being able to spell VFR, and we figured it out. So the person you are and enabling somebody to see the individual you are and you bring to the table is so important. And it's a huge part of what we do. So very happy to be here and happy to go ahead and answer questions.
Thanks, Tim. We've got 3 amazing people on board to help everybody today. So let's get right to the questions, and hopefully there'll be something that's on your mind if you had a question.
Hey, Joe?
Yes.
You're doing a great job, buddy. Thanks.
Thanks, Eric. All right, let's get to the first question. What characteristics do you or your organization and the industry, what do they seek in a new hire or a student? Anybody?
I'll go ahead and start off if I may. Kind of following up a little bit of what I'd said a little bit ago, that the technical skills that you bring to the table are important, obviously, and they're going to be a huge part of the success that you have in training. One of the things that I've seen that will go ahead and set a candidate apart when I was actively interviewing pilots is we're looking for those people. We're looking for somebody that you are going to want to sit next to in a very, very small room for a 4-day trip. You want to be the person that the person next to you wants to go ahead and fly with. And those people skills, the things that flesh you out beyond a resume and make you an exciting and wonderful person to go and talk to are huge. People will say, what looks good on a resume? I think it's more, what have you learned from what you can put on a resume? That's going to go ahead and flesh you out as an individual, as a human being. So they're looking for good people. They're looking for someone that is going to go ahead and further their brand. They're looking for somebody that their staff is going to enjoy working with. So the ability to go ahead and talk about who you are, what makes you unique as a person, I think are huge. That's what recruiters, in my experience, are looking for. They want to hire good people.
Good answer, Tim. Thank you.
I agree with that too. And so how do you tell if you're a good person by looking at someone's resume? I mean, what do you look at? How can you say like, okay, well, their grades are good and they've got a good job and their hours are up there, but what makes them a good person? And I think that's a big thing that the airlines look for. And I usually start off talking about the airlines because we say that's the high mark, right? If you could hit that, then anything else is pretty good. And the airlines look for that volunteer. Are you involved in your community? Are you giving back? And it doesn't always, you don't have to volunteer in an aviation organization. You could volunteer at the SPCA. They just want to know that it makes you well-rounded as a person. And so the more you have outside of your job or college to show that what Tim said, you're a good person, and that's how it looks on the resume. So absolutely, I always say build your resume, because just what Tim said, in the process of building your resume, that is what is making you a well-rounded person. So hit those things, and it could be your church. It could be something that you're really passionate about. And if you are passionate about it, that's also another great way to keep networking, because you're going to meet people in there and you're going to say, yeah, I'm in training to be a pilot. I want to go to the airlines. And they'll say, oh, I have an uncle who's at the airlines. Let me put you in touch with that person, right? So it's all connected.
Yeah, absolutely. Echoing that, interviewers have, I mean, imagine if you were in the shoes of an interviewer and all you had was a piece of paper with some information listed on it, and just the first time that you're meeting someone in person to go off of, to then try and decide, is this person going to be a good fit for the team? It's a lot to try and divine using very little information. So being able to speak to things that you do outside of the bare minimum, things you do above and beyond, like volunteer work, joining professional organizations, just getting out there and networking and being involved in the aviation community, makes it easier on the interviewer, because then they're able to spark up a conversation with you more easily by just seeing that on your resume of, oh, I see you're part of this. Tell me a little bit about that. And like Tim said, they want to know, in addition to you having the minimum requirements of the technical skills and the training, are you also going to be someone who's going to be enjoyable to be stuck in a cockpit with for 4 hours or not? And that, being able to have that attitude and being able to speak freely and getting out and involved is part of what will help sway the interviewer and be like, oh, this person's a great candidate, because they are distinguished from the other competition because they have this about them that makes them special. This thing that they do that goes above and beyond. And it's a great icebreaker. It relaxed them by talking about it. The interviewer wants you to see the authentic person who's across the table from them. And so sometimes having that volunteer experience or community experience also serves that other purpose of helping the interviewer get through to the genuine you and break through some of the initial nerves that come with an interview.
Those are all great answers. And I agree. From my background, I'll add that flying as a 747 captain, when we were on our long trips, it really helped to have people that you got along with and that you could talk with. It was 15 plus hours in the cockpit with 3 other people. Yeah, that's a long time. Also, I might add, everybody had a great answer. I wanted to add in, I like the idea of the volunteering, but I also like the idea of becoming a CFI. This shows the employer that you can teach, you can mentor, because when you're hired, you're not hired as a first officer, you're hired as captain material. So they want to see someone who has that abilities. Becoming a CFI gives you that in a couple of 100 hours if you're a good CFI.
I'm sorry, just to go ahead and tag on to that really quick. Whoever said those who can't do teach was not in aviation, or I'm not sure what part of life they were actually in, because the measure of really being able to be a good pilot is your ability to teach it. When you're a commercial pilot, sometimes your landings get lucky more than they do, but it isn't until you have to teach somebody to land an airplane that you really know what it takes to go out and land that. So completely echoing that, Joe.
Yeah, that's for sure, Tim. When I was a commercial instrument pilot way back, and gosh, I had my ratings and I thought, wow, I really know this stuff. And then I became a CFI and I said, I really don't know this stuff. But after 250, 300 hours of teaching, you really have to know it. So I found that as the biggest plus that I had in my career. But it's been a long time ago, so I wanted to ask the panelists, what's the current procedures? Tell us about the typical hiring enrollment process now.
Well, I actually was talking to one of my alumni who went on to an airline, and he's very active in the Alumni Association now. So we talk pretty regularly, and I happened to catch him, and I was just like, hey, can you tell me kind of step by step, I'm going to be on this panel, I want to share step by step what that's like. And he told me a little bit about it. I could share some. So he said, you know, his experience was he's going to fill out his airline apps first, and then then it could take a few weeks to a few months to hear back. But once you hear back, if you get selected for an interview, they'll schedule an interview. And he went in and they flew him out to do his interview. They paid for his flight and everything. They flew him out the night before, and then early in the morning, the next morning, there was a shuttle waiting at the hotel to pick him up and take him to headquarters. So prior to him flying out, the airline had sent him a list of all the things that he would need to bring, like documentation, his logbooks, both digital and hard copy logbooks, and all of his identification as well. So he brought all of that. The logbooks needed to be tabbed with particular things that the interviewers were going to be looking for as part of ATP minimum regs. And so he brought all that, got up really early that morning, got in the shuttle and was driven to headquarters, and then waited in a room with some other candidates. And they were called in and got briefed about the airline, the latest update about what's going on at the airline, and also given an opportunity to ask any questions. Once that was over, they went back out into a waiting room and waited for their turn to be called into an interview. And then there were two recruiters who asked, taking turns asking HR questions and then technical question, and then an HR question and then a technical question. And so what they were looking for was, they weren't necessarily looking for the perfect answer to every single thing, although it is important to have well-prepared answers for an interview. But another important thing that they were looking for during the interview process was just, they want to know that you can function well under pressure. So they understand, as these two veteran recruiters, they were both pilots and captains, in fact, sitting across the table. They understand that this is intimidating for a person just coming out of, a CFI, just like coming right out of school. So they want to see how well you can keep your poise under pressure, and how calm you can be, and clear, how clear-headed you can also be when interviewing. So once the interview was over, and also during this interview process, you turn in your identification and your logbooks for review. Then when the interview was over, you were released back out to the waiting room, and they review your documents and stuff while you wait. And then you get called back in, and you're either given a conditional job offer or not. And if you're given a conditional job offer, if you choose to accept it, you would sign it and then go and get fingerprinted so that they could do your in-depth background check, and also do your drug test. Then you would fly back home or go back home and keep in touch with them every month or so with updated logbooks. until you're a couple months out from meeting your minimums, at which point you would schedule a time with a recruiter to then start your ATP CTP training. The recruiter would schedule it, they'd send you an email, and then you could just get an email with the date and time of the training schedule, hotel and airplane ticket information. And so that was kind of a process of what to expect with like the nitty gritty details of the hiring process for the regional airlines.
Thanks, Rochelle. Hey, for those of you on the call who may not know what Airline Apps is, Rochelle, you mentioned that. Could you explain to them what that is and how they go about getting on that website?
Absolutely. So airlineapps.com is a website. It's a job application website that many airlines will use that's where you will apply to that airline through. One thing, a recommendation would be you can start on this on your airline apps, start on it early if you want to apply for a job, because it's pretty in depth. They ask for your employment history dating back, I think, like 10 years. And also they want to know every place that you've ever lived. So like there's a little bit of legwork involved in gathering information, depending on maybe some of the younger people might not have as much info to dig up, but other times maybe you do, maybe you have lived a lot of places. And so it's a very detailed job application. And so you would create an account, and then you could use that to apply to the different airlines.
Thanks.
And I know other people have probably some really valuable stuff to add for that too, like Tim and Lindsay as well. So anything else?
Yeah, I'll go ahead.
Go ahead.
I'm going to jump in. So Airline Apps, it does cover a lot of airlines, a lot of regionals, and a lot of majors. It doesn't cover everyone. You get to apply to one airline for free. If you want to apply for more than that, you do have to pay. It's like $40, $45 a year. And just what Rochelle was saying is that go ahead and you guys could do that now. Also use a company that does application review, because they know exactly what to look for. They could advise you. They look at like, hey, your date here says you're at this job, but then your date says that you're living at this location, which doesn't coincide. So they look at those things that the airlines will look at and make sure you fix them prior to. Update your application. I've heard companies say every Sunday night, go in, update your application. If you only flew 5 hours that week, add in 5 hours. Companies like to see that it's updated because that shows that you're interested. Also, some companies will even say, hey, this person's been applying for 5 years. They really must want to work here. So that's why I encourage you to go ahead and get your airline app account now, update it. You could have you could have 5 different jobs on there. Another thing too is it's kind of one of those tricky things. You could go into the addendum section and send off letters of recommendation to people who actually work at that company. And I would highly encourage that. That's also something you could start at now, because if you only know like one person who is at Frontier and you're really gunning to fly at Frontier, start tapping your network and start saying, hey, I really would like more internal recommendations from Frontier, because that's going to look really good for you. Now you get to start saying to everyone, scream from the mountaintops, I want to fly at Frontier Airlines. And they're going to say, oh, okay, I know so-and-so, I'll introduce you. And then you make that introduction and you get to know that person. And then you say, oh, by the way, I have an application in, could you write me a letter of recommendation? Even if you haven't flown with that person, it's still okay to have that letter of recommendation. So there's a lot of really good things that you guys could start doing now at this point in your careers. And also, Rochelle kind of mentioned the day of the interview, and I want to really highlight the point that when you leave your house in the morning, I want you guys to act as if you were on the interview until you get home. You could be on a 3-day trip flying cross country out to Atlanta for Delta Airlines for an interview. And those 3 days should act as if you are on the interview, because everyone's going to be watching you. Your Uber driver, the shuttle driver, the crew who flies you knows you're going out for an interview. Everyone's going to be watching you. Don't ask to hang your suit up. Don't ask for anything special. Don't be a jerk. Don't be a person. Be on your best behavior at all times. I've heard someone who got a preferential interview because they met one of the assistant chief pilots on the shuttle van to their interview. So it is absolutely true that this stuff happens. So act as if the whole process is your interview, not just the 3 hours in the building.
Great
Lindsay, it's funny you bring that up. I was flying from Texas back to Chicago where we used to do all of our interviews, and I was seated next to someone and I looked over and I noticed the folder in front of them had the airline that I work name on for. And I just very casually started asking them questions. They said they were there for an interview and they were supposed to study all this information. They really hadn't really studied it, but they would get to it. Imagine the surprise on their face when they walked into the interview and saw me. It's just, like you said, your interview starts very, very early. You know, just kind of adding on to what everybody said, and I couldn't agree with everybody more. Your interview is kind of like your life at that airline. And it's part of the reason that it's so important. Rochelle went ahead and said they're going to send you a checklist of things to go ahead and bring. If you do everything right, you've spent thousands of dollars on your aviation education, a couple $100 on the right suit, and you've gotten yourself there, and it tells you to make 2 copies of your driver's license. You only make 1 copy of your driver's license, your documentation. Doesn't seem like a big deal, but you just proved to that company that you can't follow a checklist. So everything they said, of course, every interview is going to be a little bit different. Some of them are going to be virtual, some of them are in person, some of them are virtual and in person. The important thing to realize is brief yourself on the approach, brief yourself on the interview, anticipate what is going to go and happen, and be as prepared as possible. Go above and beyond. One of the first interviews I ever did, got done interviewing the gentleman, and when he left, he had handwritten thank you notes. He had about 5 of them. Before he left, he got the names of the people that interviewed and just filled in their name and put it there. How much time did that take him? Probably 3 minutes out of his life, and that was it. But talk about a personal touch. Talk about somebody that you remembered, and talk about that being the type of person that you want to be in the cockpit with. So that entire interview is the epitome of how you are as a pilot, and you should plan for it accordingly.
Those are all great answers. I wanted to add something for those of you on this call who are not already members of Pathways. We do teach every Wednesday at 4 o'clock Pacific time, these kinds of areas, how to act in the interview, what to bring to the interview, how to interview. And I'll just add something for free for those of you who haven't been involved. Those of you who have, like Casper, you've heard this a couple of times. I used to do the interviewing at United Airlines way back. And I know that the interviewee is on edge. They're very apprehensive of everything. This may be the first time they're interviewing with an airline. They don't want to screw it up. So the advice is to be more prepared than they tell you to be. So if they tell you to make 1 copy, make 4 copies and bring the originals and put them all in brand new folders, not the cheap stuff you find in your office. Get really good stuff ahead of time. So when you, I think it was Rochelle said to have the logbook tabbed. So what you do instead of just tabbing your original logbook is you take photos with your phone and print those pages and make 4 copies, so that when you're sitting in front of those 2 or 3 or maybe 4 interviewers, they each have a copy. So when they ask you for a copy, you can send 4 of them. Now you can sit back and they're going, wow, this person is prepared. Now you can take a breath and you're that much ahead for the next question. And it really helps. I've seen this, so I can tell you firsthand. Those were all great answers. I loved them. Let's continue with the next question. What ways can students prepare for their pilot careers?
You know, the nice thing about being where some of the students may be right now, where you're not ready to interview at this moment, is you are under very little pressure to make a decision in a week. So this is one of the best times to start looking at everything that's out there. And I think Lindsay said it earlier, the airlines are only one option. There are so many things to do in aviation, whether aviation becomes your job or whether aviation becomes how you do your job. There are so many options that are out there. Start figuring out what makes you happy. Start figuring out where your smile is. Attend events like this, go to job fairs, join social media for all of the different aviation companies, and start figuring out what's important and what you want to do. Do you want to be home every night? Okay, there are aviation jobs that can do that for you. Do you want to see the world? There are aviation jobs that can do that for you. Start figuring out what other pilots are talking about that they enjoy with their company and realize what's out there. But literally start building a spreadsheet right now of what all these different companies are offering. And every time you ask your list of questions to a company, they're going to answer those questions and they're going to provide some additional stuff that you didn't ask. And now you have 3 more questions to go and ask that next company. And as you continue doing that and updating your repertoire of information, you're going to end up knowing more about that company than maybe the pilot recruiters do. So you're going to have a really good idea of what you want to do in aviation. This is a fantastic time to go ahead and do it. Is just, they say a good pilot is always learning. There's no such thing as having too much knowledge. Start learning about your industry now to figure out where you fit in it.
I'm also going to say this. I hope this is totally different than what Tim said, but pass your check rides. This is your time to be learning how to fly, and passing those check rides is pretty much your biggest job right now. And that's going to come back to you in a couple of years when you're applying for these jobs. So take those check rides seriously.
Good answer.
Again, I know we've talked a little bit about networking already, but just again, I just want to plug the value that comes with networking, from kind of piggybacking off of what Tim just said about learning all the different options. There's a staggering array of options, and there's an option for every type of lifestyle, everything. If you have prioritize family life, there's an option for you. Like Tim said, you want to be home every night, or if you, whatever it is, whatever your particular profile looks like for the ideal career, there's something out there for you. But it's a matter of finding it and doing the proper homework. And you don't have to do it alone. That's why networking is so helpful, because people can ask things that you hadn't even thought of. You don't even know what you don't know sometimes. And so if you immerse yourself in organizations and groups, if you attend activities and events on campus or in your community or in the aviation community as a whole, where you can get together with a bunch of other people who are looking for the same things as you are, or maybe looking for totally different things, but they're aviation enthusiasts and they're on that track, on that career path, just like you, that's when you're going to find more and more information and stumble across, oh, like I didn't even know that was a thing. Like now I know this question, I know to ask this question, and I know the answer to this question. So, that's one more thing I can check off my list. One more thing I learned today. And it will be exponentially more true the more involved you get in organizations and memberships, the more you seek out mentorship opportunities from people who have already been there before. So yeah, again, just like network and participate. This is the opportunity for you to really get all the opportunities that are available to you by participating in your own academic career that will then lead you to an ideal professional career.
Those are all great answers. For those of you who may not know, there's a wealth of information online. There are forums for just about every airline, and the pilots go on there and they say what the interview was like. Even corporations, you can go to different websites and find out what the pilots in those corporations like about the job, what they don't like about the job, how the interview went, if they like the chief pilot or not, or the operations manager. There's so much information out there. Like Tim said, this is the best time to go and look, see what area you want to be in. Corporate flying is completely different from airline flying. If you just want to fly pipeline patrol, that's totally different. There's like 30 different jobs you could fly just as a pilot. You could go to the Caribbean and fly people between the islands. Or you could fly seaplanes, you could fly helicopters. It's just almost endless. So now's the time to see what really interests you, what makes you happy, what goals do you have? For those of you who don't know, there's probably about, how many, Pete, 300 people on this call? For those of you who may have a question in the back of your mind, there may be 300 other people who also have this same question. Now's the time to ask the panelist. Pete, can they unmute, or would you rather do them chat?
Best by chat because there are so many people, but you're
All
in
right.
charge.
Okay. Let's open this up for questions. We still have 15 minutes or so. We've answered some really good questions. Our panelists are amazing. If nobody else has a question, I wanted to bring something up to the panelists because this applied to me after I started my airline career. I wanted to ask each one of you, if you could go back to your former self, what would you do differently so that you'd be in a better position with your aviation career today?
Talk to your career services person. That's why they're there, and they can help you not struggle with things. That's why I became a career services person.
Good.
I regret nothing.
You were very smart, Lindsay.
I think, maybe I should have done that differently, or maybe I should have stuck around there, but I'm a firm believer everything happens for a reason. And I've had a lot of really fun jobs, odd jobs, different things I've done, and it is all added up to the person I am now. So I think along those lines, one of the things would be upgrade to captain as soon as possible. I was flying seaplanes in the Caribbean, and then that's my one of like, I should have stuck around to upgrade to captain down there. But at the same time, my family was having a lot of health issues, and I moved back home to be a part of my mom and grandma's health problems. And so I don't regret that. I was where I was needed to be, but there's always those whys in the road. And at the time you kind of wonder, should I go left or right, or what should I do? And I am a firm believer there is no wrong answer. You can't go wrong. And that's also, I guess, more of a life philosophy as well, but enjoy it, do it all, have fun, or pick one thing and do it really well.
Very good. Tim,
I would definitely, I'd piggyback on a little bit of what they said. Rochelle had said, talk to your career counselors. If we go back about a year and a half ago, aviation companies and airlines were showing up at colleges and flight schools all over the country and buying them pizza and dying to go and give you that information. In the late 90s, early 2000s, that did not exist. So we had to go ahead and find the information ourselves. I will say that I was probably not one of the best candidates out there when it came to seeking out the information. If I would go back and do differently, I would probably take a little bit more responsibility for my career. And even though the airlines weren't coming to me, that meant that it was my responsibility to go to the airlines or go to the different companies and find out what is going on in the industry and what the white rate of B is. So again, it just comes down to seeking out the information and getting your answers, getting your questions answered. Even if they're not offering you the answers, find the answers, find what's going on and figure out what is actually going on.
And I think along with that, it's get a mentor. Mentorship is huge. And that person could help out a lot to help guide you. Just like a career counselor in college, having a mentor will offer you a lot as well throughout your career.
all great answers. One of the questions in the chat was, what's the difference between flying privately and commercially? So I think by that you mean flying for a corporation versus flying for an airline. Anybody want to take that question?
I'll take that one because I've done both. You have to have your commercial license for one to do both. The airlines, it's part 121. You could do airlines, we know what the airlines are, the regionals, majors, commercial. I mean, you could call that corporate, you could call that business aviation. I know a lot of people who are in a Fortune 500. I mean, think Visa, Adobe, Amazon, Google. Those are all huge business aviation departments flying Gulfstreams, Globals, I mean, all over the world. Or I fly a Learjet 45 for a local family where I live. And so that's also considered private aviation. I flew a 135. So it's charter. I say we're the Uber driver of the sky. You want to go to Vegas, you call us up, we'll take you to Vegas, and we'll pick you up next week and take you to Scottsdale for spring training, that kind of thing. And so there's a lot of different aspects when you think of commercial or corporate or business aviation, and there's a lot to offer. It's a lot harder to tap into because it's more like the secret unicorn where you really do need that network that people really don't know about compared to the airlines. But it could offer a lot of amazing flying opportunities once you kind of tap into that sector.
Yeah, that's a good answer, Lindsay. And this is why you have a mentor. This is why, for those of you who don't have someone to talk to, you call Pete at Pathways, and he hooks you up with someone who can help you. Pete, we're in 40 states now and 5 countries, I think, besides 6 countries.
6, but nobody's counting.
Nobody's counting. So we have somebody in all parts of the world who can help you. Pete can hook you up with someone, or these 3 great panelists would be I'm sure they'd answer your questions, or myself or Eric.
Hey, Joe, there's a follow-up question in there about what is a good foundational route to get into corporate flying too?
Okay. Tim, do you have an answer for that?
The regional route is I think he even mentioned as the foundation that most people use if they want to go and get to the major airlines, because it's building that type of experience. Getting into corporate flying, and again, I think Lindsay could probably jump into this as well, being that you've lived it. Building jet time is going to open a lot of doors for you. If your goal is to go ahead and fly somebody's very expensive toy around the country, you usually have got to have a lot more relevant experience than you do to go ahead and get started with the regionals. Getting started with the regionals, very often you could do so with minimum ATP time, the majority of it being in Cessna 172s and Seminoles. If you are trying to go ahead and fly somebody's expensive jet toy, usually you've got to go ahead and come to the table with some quality jet time. A couple of friends that I know that are corporate pilots for some individuals, they cut their teeth in the jet world in the regionals. So in some cases, the path can be similar, just where you choose to Y off and go somewhere else can change a little bit. And that's one answer to the question. Again, knowing that there's not only one way to do it.
Yeah, there's a lot of ways to do it. And Lindsay, if there's another question that you might be able to answer, do you have to be a CFI to build hours?
No, but it's a great time to build that PIC time as well. And what you mentioned, Joe, it's good experience to become an instructor.
Yes.
And corporate is all about who you know. I was hired to fly a Citation 10 with 1,000 hours. I had no jet experience, but the line guys at the Monterey Jet Center said, call Lindsay, she'll help. Great, what's her last name? We don't know. Ask the ladies at the desk. So that's how they found me. So for corporate, it's really out there pounding pavement, getting to know people. The insurance requirements make it a little bit harder these days with having time and experience in the jet and the type rating. But I guarantee you, if they like you enough, they'll figure out a way to make it happen. Yeah. And that goes back to personality, right? Don't be a dick.
And that's exactly what you were saying before. You have to be that person, somebody who really gets along with people, someone who people like. That's why you were recommended. It's you weren't just showing up and not talking to anyone. You were out there making yourself known.
Yeah, and letting them know too. It's like they want to recommend me because they've seen my work ethic, right? They've seen me show up early, stay late, help out, clean, see what needs to be done. And those are all part of, you know, being that good person, being someone that someone wants to recommend.
Right. A follow-on question to that: if you don't want to be a CFI, how would you get involved with flying, say, airmail or some other commercial operation where, like, a person with low time could get into the right seat to get experience? Anyone?
I think again, you can really lean on networking for this kind of thing. Like locally, we've had some students who have been able to find opportunities doing weather type flying. So that's something they were able to, through word of mouth, find this opportunity. Another one found an opportunity to fly a King Air. Now, maybe you might have to start and get some hours as a CFI first and then transition, but sometimes you might get lucky and get a right seat opportunity at an FBO. You know, there are other things, but leaning into that network and finding what's available in your community and are you willing to kind of stick your neck out or make the sacrifices that might be necessary to venture off to find something that's not as conventional as the path that most people take to rack up those hours is important.
Yes. Yeah, one thing I found, and why I'm stressing so much to be a CFI, even if you don't want to teach, get your CFI license. Those of you who may have 200, 300, 400 hours and you got a commercial instrument rating, you really don't know it all. You really shouldn't be in the right seat of a King Air with somebody. If that person has a heart attack, are you ready to take over? Possibly not. If you're a CFI, you really learn fast. You know all the intricacies of flying instruments and etc. That's why I promote it so much. You don't have to be a CFI. You don't have to like teaching, but the training is amazing.
If I can go ahead and piggyback a little bit on both of what you guys have just said, when you're talking about building, you know, building the foundation of your time to go ahead and move on to bigger and faster things, experience is sometimes more important than hours, because you can build a whole lot of hours and not learn a lot doing it. And I think one of the things that makes being a flight instructor so effective is every hour that you spend teaching is something completely different. Yes, there's teaching, there's flight planning, there's adherence to the regulations, but it's always a brand new experience and a new problem that you're solving. So if flight instruction is not for you, if you are building your hours and experience, make sure it's something that you are learning relevant information for. You can go ahead, probably the easiest way to go and build all your flight time is buy an airplane and fly around the country. It's the easiest, it might be the most expensive, but educationally, it's probably the least effective, because just boring holes in the sky is not going to do as much as something that you are continuing to go and practice relevant instrument experience. So I agree with you, Joe, that I think being a flight instructor is definitely one of the best ways to do it. Whether you want to start teaching somebody in a Cessna 172, you are going to be teaching at some point. At some point, you're teaching the person next to you how to go and be a pilot. You maybe could control whether it's at 100 miles an hour or at 500 miles an hour. Might make it a little bit easier to go and start early.
Right. Well, one thing I can add is that almost every commercial operation requires flying instruments, other than pipeline patrol, etc. So if you were going to just get one CFI rating, I would get the CFI II. Teach instruments, because that's what you're going to be using. That's what everybody's looking for. If you get lucky enough and get in the right seat of a Lear 45 or a King Air or something fast, it's going to have only IFR operations. So that's what you should really stress. And I agree totally. These people that have been teaching private students for their whole career, then they get to 1,500 hours and they go into the airline regionals, they're a little bit behind. Those of you who know what I'm talking about know what I'm talking about. Those of you who have gone the route of teaching CFI, maybe teaching ATP, now you look a lot better for the airlines if you're going the airline route.
I just want to pipe up too. I've been hearing a lot of people say lately, well, I don't want to teach. I don't want to be a CFI. And it seems that I'm starting to question, well, why? Why not? What are you afraid of? And I think, you're sitting as a private pilot, instrument pilot, and you're already projecting, next year that you don't want to do something. So I would just kind of wait and see until you're actually at that spot before you already discount not wanting to teach, and then question, like, why are you saying that? Is it a fear? Are you just afraid to teach someone? Because it is scary, but it's also very educational and exhilarating. So don't make up your mind yet.
Good answers. Well, we're almost at the end of the hour, and this has been really fascinating and very enjoyable. 3 great panelists. I want to thank you all, and thank the 300 people for being on this call. And just to remind you, those of you who are looking for mentors, you can ask Pete. He's got a whole bunch of lists of people everywhere in the world, and we've got 3 great panelists. If you get a hold of Pete, give him your email, then the panelists and I or whoever will contact you and give you your help. Pete, I think we're done with questions. It's back to you.
I think, Joe, we could have been here all night. This is amazing. Thank you guys so much. Joe is right. If you want to be put in touch with any of these great panelists, just drop their name in the chat. I have their emails. I have all of your emails. So I can just easily make that connection, because what we try to do is try to keep the private data, the emails and phone numbers, away from chat just for security purposes. But if you want to get in contact with them or me, just drop their names in the chat. I pull the records when this is over, and I will do the email introductions. Rochelle, Lindsay, Tim, you guys, home run, grand slam. I mean, it's been amazing. I'm even learning. So that's why I step back, let Joe do the hard work so that I can learn. If any of you on the call want to learn more about what's going on at Pathways and how we can help you either get connected to amazing mentors like these 3, or help you along your own career readiness journey. Even if you're a freshman in high school, you're not ready to get that first job yet, there are things that you can be doing now. They've already highlighted a number of them, but we can help you work on your resume, articulate all your skills in a verbal format, get to know people. We can do that on a regular basis, and it's free of charge. So just check out our website. Everything's up there. I've even put up the schedule for the next 16 workshops once Aviation Career Week ends, with the topics for each one. So we're happy to get you guys involved with that. That's all I have. I think I'm going to turn it over to our board chair, Eric Henry, to close us out.
Perfect. Thanks, Pete. Again, Rochelle, Lindsay, Tim, you guys knocked it out of the park. Fantastic. Thank you for taking your time and investing and pouring into these students and job seekers, because some of these job seekers are a little older than students, and that's okay. And Joe, great job moderating this panel. It was a fantastic panel. So anyway, you guys have a great rest of the week, and we're out of here in 3, 2, 1. Bye, guys.